September 16th CPC meeting to order. Thanks for attending. Those could make it. I know Meg was concerned she wasn't able to make it, but you know, things happen. So, so we have an agenda. I think everybody's seen a copy of the agenda, but let's start with agenda item number 1. And I'll just note, coincidentally, I didn't put review of minute meetings on there, but since Meg's not here, we would have skipped that anyway. So we'll jump to what the agenda item number 1, which is something we've talked about in previous meetings and other communications about, you know, the 2021 grant cycle schedule and what we may want to do there. It's a, you know, it's a, I think a little complicated by a couple of factors. One being, you know, this pandemic and Zoom and trying to all work in this new reality. And then also the fact that we've had 2 applicants, 3, but now down to 2 applicants approach us about potential, you know, emergency applications. And then another, I think, complicating matter is the idea of a small grant program, which is agenda item number 2. We'll jump after we finish this. We can talk about that. But I think that you know, we should keep that in mind as we're having this conversation about the 2021 grant cycle schedule. You know, I think I have my opinions. You know, I'm curious what other people on the committee, what, you know, may think about it. And, you know, so why don't we start with, how's everybody feeling about, you know, about the 2021 grant cycle? Any ideas or suggestions about how we might want to handle this year? We've got a couple years under our belt. You know, I think there's a certain sense that we could really expedite the process if we wanted to. It's not necessarily in compliance with our plan, but you know, our plan can be modified. I don't think it prohibits us from changing the schedule if we so desire. So that's my big picture thoughts. I don't know what other people may have for input on 2021 cycle schedule. Any thoughts?
Yeah, my only thought, and I'm happy to be talked out of this, is that maybe in light of all the circumstances, we ought to just push all of the deadlines back, because everybody else has pushed deadlines back for everything. And, you know, I feel like we're feeling our way in general as a society and as a community. And, you know, I worry about rushing through this.
Okay. Anybody else? Mike?
Mr. Chairman, by way of just in letting me know, what are the current schedules? What is the current schedule as we speak for people that want a project under normal conditions? Does anybody remember?
Yeah, Amy, you want to?
Yeah. So normally the eligibility, the sort of 1 or 2 page eligibility application would be due, like last year, we had it due September 30th, and we usually gave the people at least a month notice. And then then I have that the full application was due November 15th, which actually that doesn't make sense because that wouldn't give them a full month. Maybe we didn't give them a full month for the full application. But that's what I have here. So it was.
Wait, that's 6 weeks.
From September 30th to November 15th will be 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of time.
Oh yeah, November. I was thinking October. Yeah, so that's what we did last year. And just so you know, just as a reminder, there's only one emergency application now for the housing program because Mike Moriarty withdrew his. So it's just Stephen Huntley, Valley Opportunity Council. And there have been at least 2 or 3 people who have contacted me asking, are you gonna, can we apply for the grant? So just wanted to let you know that.
Right. So, and we also have all of the applicants who didn't get funded in this most recent funding cycle that we have encouraged to, reapply. So there's plenty, I think, of applicants in the pipeline. And so those are just some more facts. And what else? Any other opinions about the funding cycle? And I think Mimi has suggested that maybe pushing deadlines back makes some sense.
Yeah,
I know that Meg. I'm
prevent
sorry.
people applying.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that doesn't mean they can't apply now. It would just-
Right.
Yeah.
And
So if somebody has an emergency or something that they need to meet another grant, then they can apply. I would think that we could keep that open, but in other words, we'll just kind of lay back a little bit.
So I know that, Meg had, and I don't want to speak for Meg, but I think I remember correctly her stating that she wanted to speed it up, to say like, we've been through this a few times. Do we really need like this big gap between eligibility and the final application? Could someone just submit a 2-part application? The eligibility is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You should be able to look at the guidance and decide whether they meet it or not. If they don't meet it, we'll kick out their full application. They've filled out 2 forms that they shouldn't have instead of 1. And, I think that has some merit because there is the idea of, that we do have a big dollar emergency application coming, and it is a little bit difficult to evaluate that in a vacuum. Not impossible. It's just a thought. So.
Can I just add one thing? The purpose of the eligibility application, actually, the reason it's recommended is that there is, it can enable us to let people know, no, this isn't going to qualify. So it saves them the time of doing all the work and research of putting together a full application. And there have been times where that was very important. If not to say that they're ineligible, but to just guide them, because, I would have to send this to Stuart Sagner and say, what do you think? And he'd say, no, this is not a typical thing that CPA funds. So it's sort of helpful on everybody's side. And it's a pretty short application, it's really just
it isn't right. And that's the point. It's like, it isn't just that it's also eats up 6 weeks. If you're trying to, and I'm not advocating for a shorter or more expedited funding cycle. I'm just suggesting that if we were trying to accomplish that, that's one way of chopping 6 weeks off. Just say, fill out the eligibility and attach it to the full application. You may get kicked out based on eligibility, but these applications are not that burdensome. It's not like you're asking someone to, provide 100 pages of information as part of their application. And there's pretty strong guidance. And I think we have, as a committee, and Amy, you have more ability to, guide people as they're trying to determine whether their project is eligible or not, even outside this eligibility application. If someone comes, there's something clearly not allowed, artificial turf on a sports.
Well, it can be complicated. And actually what I think though, a way to cut down on the time would be just to respond to them sooner about whether they're eligible, so they can get started on their application,
That also would accomplish that goal. But that, then that, so, this is thinking out loud about what we want to do about, funding cycle for 2021. And I wish we had more members of the committee here to have this discussion, because I think it's an important one, but we don't, so we're having it ourselves. I don't know that we'll take a vote on it or we're going to make any decisions today. We might, but we certainly, we have laid out basically, kind of two options. One is to slow down and one is to speed up. And there's,
No, I think we can accomplish both, actually, because I think you're making a very salient point about the gap in time between the eligibility applications and the full applications. And I also think that you're absolutely right about the value of knowing what people are going to be asking for before we start dealing with emergency funding. And on the other hand, if we cut down that gap of 6 weeks, that gives us, you know, if we wanted to just push back the point where we're making decisions, which is what I'm concerned about, that gives us basically like a month that we've saved.
What was that, Mimi? That gives us what?
And essentially a saved month. If we're cutting it down to like 2 weeks, then we've saved 4 weeks out of the process. And we've pushed it back even if we don't, as it were.
right. So, I mean, I do think that there is a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, but there's also a lot of need, right? And
Yeah.
and there's some projects that are out there that that could be very helpful in these days. That either projects that didn't get funded out of the last cycle or ones that have come to our attention since. So,
Yeah, I'm just
I,
concerned
I
about
would.
spending all of our money before we know what all the needs are.
And this is also, we need to get our arms around the finances
Yeah.
of the committee. We had as an example, the grant to One Holyoke that's coming back into the pot. So, what do we have available? How are we feeling about collections? What are, there's a lot of, there's a lot of information that I think we need to get our arms around before generally voting for funding of applications. But as I think there's a lot of need right now, and I think there and we clearly have some money, and I guess maybe what comes to mind is be far enough along in the process that if we are comfortable with funding a project and it's a project that needs timely funding, we have the ability to do that. We're not waiting for, between eligibility and the final applications, or we haven't had enough time to consider the other applications. So
yeah, no, I'm just really more concerned with there is need. There are a lot of very worthy projects, but a lot of them can wait. Some of them won't be able to wait. And the part that scares me is we're enthusiastic about everything, we fund everything, then something comes in late and it's a genuine emergency, but the cupboard is bare.
yeah, well, that's a reasonable concern these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, these are all the types
But
of
those are
things that,
things we can deal with as they come up.
right.
But you're right, the first thing to do is get our arms around all of this.
Right. So I do think that initiating an application process sooner rather than later is probably a good thing. And then, we're kind of on target with what we normally do. We're a little late in notifying people that we're going to be accepting applications, but we're shortening up where we can the process so that we have an ability to make some decisions upon the applications that we receive.
Yeah, I would just suggest
Mike Sullivan waiting to.
Oh, yeah.
that we warn people that the time to make a decision may be delayed a little.
Right.
Because of the uncertainties of this year. But yeah, there's no problem with accepting them.
Mike, can you hear us?
He's just logging on.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to mention something that, there's two things. One is that, as you mentioned, or maybe Mimi mentioned that, I think Kip, you mentioned that the 43 Canal Street is money that goes back into the pot. And there are still a lot of projects that haven't even begun yet.
Right.
And plus, we're not really sure what's happening with MIFA. So that could sort of change how much money is actually available. And then so that's just one point I want to make, because I'm right now, I've just reviewed a bunch of contracts for FY20 that need to be signed. So there's that going on. The other question is, if you do want to have another grant cycle fairly soon, does that mean that you would like to invite the previous applicants who were rejected, like the YMCA? Would we just say to them, like, I would just reach out to them and say, hey, do you want us to just use the application as you already submitted it? Or would we ask them to resubmit something, or based on any changes?
I think the committee already voted, right? There was a motion and a vote to allow just the acceptance of those applications as long as there hadn't been any material changes to it, with a simple letter that said we want to be considered for funding again. So I think we do want to reach out to them and let them know that. So Mike Sullivan, just to bring you up to speed, we're on agenda item number 1. We're just talking about the 2021 grant cycle schedule and how people are feeling about it. There's like, I think we feel like, we're being pulled in a couple different directions. One is, there's a lot of need, and there's some good projects that should, we should give consideration to. On the other hand, there might be some really significant needs coming up in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and maybe having money, in the bank would be, a more prudent way to approach this year. I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer to that stuff. It's just, and I think that there's starting to be a consensus, although no official action has been taken on the agenda item, about maybe initiating the process so that we can get applications in front of us. We know we're going to get at least one emergency application for rental assistance, which was a big dollar application. And might it be wise to be also evaluating what other applications we may get as we consider whether or not to fund the rental assistance program. So I think that brings you up to speed. I don't know if I missed anything. Anybody else wants to chime in about in my brief summary for Mike, what I might have missed?
I think you covered it.
So a lot of factors, how much money do we have? What applications might come before us? What are the timing of their needs? And then how is the committee feeling about spending any money right now versus holding to see how collections may continue to go, and what else is happening in the world. So
yeah, and if you do want to do that, I would like to know what the deadline should be to tell people, when things are due.
So Mike Falsetti, you had your hand up. What were you going to say?
Mr. Chairman, as we've all know, and you've indicated, there's a lot of uncertainty. Why don't we just move it up a month and just give people an extra month and let it go at that? There's too many variables. We can't have one formula to think, or one timetable or one formula that we think will answer all the questions that may come up as our story unfolds. For the sake of convenience for the folks that may be in the process of submitting an application, eligibility, and doing their research and so on and so forth, we give them an extra month. Okay, then let's let it go with that. I'm not sure there's one formula that's going to solve all our problems. This is a work in progress.
Right.
So as Mimi pointed out, and we all pointed out, that we're in uncertain times. So instead of September 30th, if you guys want to, make it October 30th. Instead of November 15th, make it December 15th. If it gives people more time, if they have to contact other agencies, banks, or sources of other income that they may want to throw into their application, gives them extra time to do that, because those agencies may be working offline or have reduced staff or whatever the case may be, or if they need something from City Hall and it's not that quick anymore. So if we give them an extra month, and we can't hope to, there's, like I said before, there's too many variables. Just by giving the folks an extra month on both regards and see how our story unfolds.
And it's not as if we can't take things as emergencies if emergencies develop.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree.
Go ahead, Rick. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I agree. I think another month would be helpful.
All right, are we ready to establish those dates? Say, end of October for eligibility application. Can we shorten up that time between eligibility and submission of the final application, or do we want to keep it at the same, 6 weeks?
The only issue I'm realizing is that I might be having surgery, so I have to look at that around this time. So there could be a delay.
That's okay. I mean, there's a delay, I mean, your health is more important than the date on this application. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
What do you think, Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, if we just keep it, it's just keep it 6 weeks. I mean, some of these were, again, a lot of institutions and nonprofits are working at reduced staff. It's much more difficult to assemble facts and figures, to compose paragraphs and do research now than it was last year, quite frankly. So, the world's not going to come to an end if we make it 4 weeks. Let's keep it 6 weeks and give the benefit of the doubt to the people that are laboring to make the eligibility form, then to make the final presentation. Because it's more difficult now than it was last year. So I'd like to give the benefit to the doubt to the people that are composing these.
I can't argue with that. So, someone want to make a motion to establish those dates for our funding cycle?
So October 30th is a Friday, and the next day is Saturday. So probably October 30th would be good for the eligibility, I'm thinking.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, then I'll make a motion to give an extra month, make it October 30th for the eligibility forms, and then make it December 15th, which is a Tuesday, if you guys want, for the final date for your application.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is the application due date close to when we meet, so that we would meet like, a week later or a few days later, or does that matter? I wouldn't want to meet and then get the applications, 2 days later.
We don't really have regular meetings, though.
Good point.
We'll schedule the meetings, for right after the closing dates.
Good point, Marco, and maybe that we can handle it like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
And so we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Amy, you got that?
Yeah, so I guess the next step then will be just letting people know that, the eligible, putting out the eligibility application, and or at least giving them a full month, right?
Yeah.
Because I have to put that together. Okay.
And you're going to contact the 2020 applicants who didn't get funded and let them know that all they have to do is submit a letter to us.
Sure.
And they can do that by December 15th is fine, but the sooner the better, right? I would buy with them.
Yeah, sure. And obviously if something changed, they can adjust their application, I guess.
Right. So, all right. So that's agenda item number 1. Let's, jump to agenda item number 2, which is the small grant program. And Mike Sullivan, I'm glad you're here. Meg will be extremely happy that you're here because, the concept is that we would, as a committee, propose to the city council that they set aside some small dollar amount, somewhere in the neighborhood, probably of $8,000 to $10,000, that would be used for funding of a small grant program that would kind of be an open cycle, and with maybe a maximum of I don't know, I think like $2,000. Again, this isn't just talking, this is not anything that's established as policy, but these are in the, I think these are in the ranges that we were discussing. You know, other committee members can chime in as we get through this about what it is. But Mike, you know, the question is, so we would have these up to $2,000 per applicant, with a maximum of, you know, budget of $10,000 under the small grant program that would go to the city council for authorization generally, instead of requiring, you know, if we get a $500 grant application that we recommend funding, that needing to go to the city council for authorization. So basically, pre-authorization of, you know, at the committee's discretion, $10,000 in a small grant program with no grant to exceed some amount, likely in the neighborhood of $2,000. And whether, what your thoughts might be about, you know, how the city council, well, first, how you react to that. And then secondly, how you think the city council might react to it, and whether it's something that you would support.
Well, it's something I would certainly support. And generally speaking, I think the city council would also. There's just so much unpredictability around what's going on at City Hall these days. I really can't speak for things. Last Thursday, I went to City Hall on city business and was denied entry. I told them I was a city councilor, said it didn't matter. I couldn't.
What?
I'm just, boy, today I get a letter from Mike Bloomberg, right? Who says the city council does not oversee CARES Act funds, nor does it oversee emergency management. All right. What goes on, you know, but part of the whole pandemic problem is employee salaries haven't seen a raise in over a decade. How that's tied in these, this stuff that's going on there behind closed doors and with all their claims of transparency, I just can't even begin to guess anymore where we're heading with stuff as far as that goes. It's just beyond me at this point. It's a totalitarian regime as far as I'm concerned.
So,
but I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great program. We can put it in front of the city council.
okay, Mike Falsetti, what were you going to say?
To Mike, through the chair, Mike Sullivan, actually to Amy, through the chair to Mike Sullivan, if we adopt the small grant application, by definition, does that have to be approved by the city council as any other program that we have?
Well, what we're saying is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, it's
okay.
a program that would come before
Well,
them.
what Meg's idea though was that if the city council could approve a blanket amount of money to go to small grants, we wouldn't have to put through each separate, you know, description.
Right.
They would have already given their approval, you know, and then it would just be a matter of distributing from that money that, you know, was earmarked.
No, and I understand that, but in order to do this initially, just to say this is a policy we're going to adapt, the small grant application policy and what it entails. Does anybody know if we have to go to the city council to get their permission to do this one policy change, if you will?
Yeah, I would think
for their
so.
permission to do this? That was my question.
Yeah, no, I would think so, because they
Okay.
have ultimate authority to approve this. And
Okay.
I would say they definitely have the right to say, we'll give you blanket authority to spend, you know, up to $12,000 a cycle, no more than 2,000 or 3,000 per.
Sure.
But I would not feel comfortable going forward without getting their formal approval of that.
So just so I'm clear on this, so let's say we had the council approved the 10,000 in the small grant category. Each small grant wouldn't go before the council. It'd be decided right here by the CPA.
Right.
That's right. So, and I'm just looking quickly at her her, draft of an application, and it looks like there would be no more than 3,000 requested for each applicant. It could be less than that, and.
Well,
Yeah.
That's Meg's suggestion, right? And I think that, I think where it seems like there is a consensus amongst the quorum that we have here today to pursue this small grant application, which would be a one-time authorization by the city council and would give this committee the discretion to be able to fund small grants without going back to the council for each individual project's funding.
Yes.
I think now the question that I would ask is, this is a $10,000 amount, the will of the quorum, and what maximum amount under the small grant application would this today committee recommend? And maybe we'll make a motion and vote. And so go ahead, Mike, what were you going to say?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to put in a little bit larger amount, because just like you're putting the date off on the other spending, just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it, but it allows you the flexibility without having to go back in front of the council the second time if a whole bunch of good stuff comes in.
Good point.
So.
You have an amount you would suggest? I was going to say maybe 12,000.
Yeah, I don't remember how much she was proposing it should be, and I don't see that on the application, just that each project would not exceed 3,000 in their funding request and 6,000 is their total budget for each project. Yeah.
So, Mike Falsetti, what were you going to say?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass with approval of the city council, the small grant application with a $12,000 ceiling, with a $3,000 overall ceiling of $12,000 and an overall ceiling of $3,000, no more than that for an individual application. With the cost of things, I mean, $12,000, I hate to say it, is not a lot of money these days to do anything. So if we made it $12,000, it's reasonable as a maximum per annually, and $3,000 individually as part to make up that 12,000. And let it go with that and see how we make out.
Yeah, that's
so. I'd like to make that motion.
Okay.
And I would just, second?
If I may, I would just like to ask Councillor Sullivan whether he thinks that we are still underfunding this.
Yes, I would suggest putting like $15,000 or $20,000 in there.
Can we just say up to 20?
No, I think it makes sense if we're going to make a cap of 3,000 per to do it in multiples of 3. I jumped at 12,000 because that's 4 if we max out on each one. But, if we go up to say 18, then we have, we can fund up to 6 projects and like that.
If you guys, Mike Sullivan, or if you guys want to make it 18,000, it's an it's increments of 3,000. Make it 18,000.
I say
whatever you guys want.
You don't have to spend it. You might not get that many applications. If you don't know, and it'll just go back into your general fund if it didn't get used. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to modify my my proposal, my motion, to just make it an $18,000 overall budget for that line item with as the overall budget, with $3,000 increments per individual as part of that, and adopt the small grant application as stated and Megan's publication.
I would second that motion.
Any further discussion?
Well, I'm just wondering, just procedure-wise, I would assume they would still do the eligibility, so we could tell them if they're eligible, or like other applicants.
Yeah. Sure. They would have to by definition.
And would they follow, would this be available in this new grant cycle then we're talking about? So I can also say, hey, well, I guess I have to wait till this is approved by city council before we put this out.
But that's pointed out one of the excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Chairman. It's pointed out that you have to be eligible. Whatever your $2,000, $2,500 application is, it states here in Mega's proposal that, yeah, it's got to be eligible, first of all, for CPA funding before anything. It states right here under, it's under small grant application instructions, number 2. It says that you have to be eligible. So I think that goes with adopting this, with Megan's proposal, if you will, on small grant applications. She contains it in here.
And the 3,000 is the cap, right?
Right.
Yeah, $3,000 for
Per
the
project.
individual. Yeah, per project, with a $18,000 overall cap annually for that line item, small grant application line item.
And I believe, for clarity, we were talking about this being like an open grant cycle, like it can come in anytime, like an emergency application. That's not required to meet this, you know, October 30th and December 15th deadlines. They could submit it tomorrow, or they could submit it January 20th. Whatever, it's open grant cycle. And so we had a motion and a second. Did we vote?
Not yet.
Still discussing. Any more discussion? Anybody have any other thoughts about? And I noticed did we lose Mimi? She's not on my screen.
Oh yeah, somebody is lost. Yeah, it's Mimi. Where did she go?
I don't know.
She must have lost contact. Hopefully she'll try to join again.
Okay. So we still have a quorum though, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, thankfully we still have a quorum. So I don't think should we vote, or would it be disrespectful to vote without Mimi?
Maybe I could just try to contact Mimi right now.
I guess it would depend on how the vote went, right? I mean, if it was close, maybe we'll need to wait for Mimi. If it's unanimous.
Definitely seeming in favor.
And my sense is it's not going to be very close. I don't know how other people feel. You want to take a vote on this?
Let's just take a vote.
All right. So, well, we had a motion and a second for, and basically what we're doing is we're asking Mike Sullivan to bring this to the city council and as a proposal. The $18,000 total budget and $3,000, not to exceed $3,000 per each applicant.
Right.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye. So that's unanimous, correct?
Yes.
Rick, you voted yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So even if Mimi voted no, it's still going to carry the day, even though I think she's going to vote yes.
She's in support.
Right.
I suspect.
So here's.
Okay, she's coming back right now.
Right.
So ask her to join the vote.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Mimi, can you hear us? You're muted, I think. There. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now.
All right, good. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So we actually voted while you were away. So but it's still open. You get to vote. We had basically a motion and a second to ask Mike Sullivan to bring to the city council a request for us to be able to fund a small grant application fund in the amount of $18,000, and which would be on a rolling, ongoing basis with no grant of greater than $3,000 to any applicant under this program. And so we voted, but we can vote again. I think it's probably, so a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Anybody have anything else they want to say about this? So we're going to vote again.
No,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now it's unanimous and Mimi got the vote.
Yes. I seconded it. So.
Here.
Looking at the agenda, a couple of other items here. We'd like to be able to get through them quickly if we can. I have agenda item number 3 as a review of the 2019 and 2020 project contract deadlines. I don't know. I don't want to spend 4 hours talking about this. I don't know how you guys feel, but you know, Amy, can you maybe just give us a
Sure.
2-minute, you know, where are we on, you know?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
so I'm just going through FY19 projects. Holyoke Boys and Girls Club Playground. It's been delayed since June 30th, 2020, which I think was the deadline because of COVID-19. But Eileen did provide a progress report. They're 87% of the work is, you know, completed, and they did request to extend the deadline until October 30th, 2020.
Okay, can we stop right there for a second? So we have the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club that have asked for an extension till what date?
October 30th
of this year.
this year.
Does the committee want to take any action on that while we're going through this?
Just approve, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just approve it.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, we extend it to their, to the date that
What
Mamie
was
just
that?
indicated from Eileen,
Which is 5 or 6
October
weeks from now.
30th.
October 30th.
Do we have a second? We
I'll
have
second that motion.
anybody, any
I just-
discussion on that?
I just want to ask to make sure. I know I don't think that we put any hard deadline on when they had to finish this. And as long as we didn't and there's no bar to doing it, you know, I don't see why we shouldn't extend it. I mean, I'm happy to, as long as it's not going to get us into trouble.
Right. Okay, so I can't think of any other reason not to take this action.
Just,
Any other, I'm
do
sorry?
you know whether we had a deadline for them to get this project done?
Yeah, their deadline was June 30th, 2020 in the contract. But because of COVID-19, they're delayed.
Yeah. And do we have anything about extended for good cause shown?
Oh,
Because-
yeah, that's in the contract. And it's
Okay.
up to the committee to make the, you know,
Okay,
decide.
Happy to vote for this extension.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? All right, so we have a motion and a second to extend the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club deadline to October 30th, 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous again, right? Okay. Sorry, I think it works to go this way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it
Just
does
like
work
instead
that
of
way.
circling back to where were we
Yeah.
on that one?
Yeah. no,
All
this
right,
is
what
much
else?
more than
What
we-
else do we have?
Okay, so then the GlowTech open space project, that did not have any contract, so it's not, you know, there's no real deadline for it. But it was anticipated to be completed, I think, June 30th of last year. And Rosemary has an update on that.
Okay. So the Conservation Commission, so here's where, so there's a conservation restriction that we've been working with the city solicitor and the lawyer for Kestrel, and it is in with the state, and it's gone back and forth a few times. The city solicitor was kind of new on this kind of a project, so it took a little longer than expected. But I think we're finally there. And so it's in its final draft, and the state is sending it back at this point. We just haven't received it yet, but it has been approved. And the Holyoke Conservation Commission voted last Thursday to accept it. So we're just waiting for it to come back from the state, and then once that comes back, they'll document with the wording on that, and then the project should be done. And then at that point, Kestrel can admit, you know, or put in the line item that they put aside so much money for how much it cost them. And so there could be some money coming back from GlowTech also. Money that we are trying to be due diligent on and give back as much as we can to the city CPA funds once we've completed this project. So it's close.
Great.
Okay, and so then moving on, the annex lanterns, the lanterns are finished, as I think I've mentioned before, but they haven't been installed or electrified yet. And I'll have to get in touch with Mike McManus again, because he told me he would update me by mid last month. So I'll have to contact him again to get an update. Let's see, Smithberry is all complete. As you know, they submitted their report. Stained glass windows, all complete. They submitted their report. Victory Theater, no, their deadline was December 1st, 2020, unless the CPC grants requested extension for good cause shown. So they did submit an emailed extension to August 2022.
I think that's a huge problem. And I don't know if we want to tackle the legalities now or do it in some separate item, but this is, this has been on my mind because, I don't even want to figure out how it is that our contract came back to them with the dates that it had. And I reviewed the video and the presentations from when we initially, when they came forward and when we approved this grant. And you all will remember that it was sensitive because so many people in the city and on the city council are very concerned with how long the project has taken to come to fruition and just throwing money at them indefinitely. It's a great project if it can happen, but, and as a result, we looked at the plans, which had just been approved by the planning board, and we asked, okay, at what point will you know that this project is going forward? We can only approve this as a part of the overall project with some guarantee that it's going to be completed. And, among our conditions will be that you have all of the money actually in hand, ready to be deployed, that you have the contract signed, and that you have a start date. And then, we'll give you X number of months with the possibility of an extension to finish the work. But the original start date, approved of enthusiastically by Don Sanders himself, we've got that on video, was December of 2019. And if, our original condition as voted on by the city council was that if they did not have those contracts signed and major construction ready to go in December 2019, at that point, the grant would terminate. So somehow or other, the contract got written with it as being December 2020 instead, and that's our current signed contract. We don't have authorization from the city council to have even done that. And I see no possibility, looking at their interim report, that they're going to have those funds by December 2020 anyway. And I think that we are at the point where we cannot legally give them this extension without going back to the city council and saying, A, we screwed up originally. We gave them a year that they shouldn't have had by your authorization. And B, if they don't have these funds in hand, do you still, assuming that it's the will of this committee to go forward with it, would the city council want to? I don't think that that's a question that answers itself. And I hate to go back to Don and to Kip Foley and say, look, guys, we just can't do it. But honest to God, I think we just can't do it if they don't have that money in 2020.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree with Mimi more. She put it well. We try to be understanding and we all hope for the best that it occurs, but this amount of money for this long with nothing to show for it. And quite frankly, with the economy being the way it is, I'm not so sure there's many banks or lending institutions that are going to have the capability to dole out donations like they did 2 years ago, when this was first formulated. Boy, I hate to say it, but I would just bring it to, if you look, well, whatever the will of the committee is, but I would say, give it to this, pass a note to the city council and say, look, guys, this is going on, we feel far enough. What do you want us, I know it's passing the buck, but
well, the other
enough is enough.
Is to just tell them that they're free to reapply if they like. But we can't.
Yeah, good idea, good idea.
And I did forget to mention too that we've also been stalled over the preservation restriction requirements. There's a lot of detail about that. I don't have to go into maybe, but well, basically Jenna and the law department found out from Michael Steinitz more information about how they could handle it to appease their historic tax credits, which they wrote this addendum to, and all they have to do is include their rehab plan within the PR. But basically it seems like they still don't want to do it that way.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, that's not what I'm hearing from them. What I'm hearing from them is they're absolutely more than willing to have a consistent preservation restriction included on the CPA contract that is consistent with the Mass Historic Commission's approval.
Yeah, I think though you may not know though that Jenna sent me an email that Don Sanders wrote to the lawyer. I don't even know if Don is aware that his lawyer forwarded this, but basically saying that they still are not content with doing what Michael Steinitz has suggested that people do in this situation, which is just take the rehab plan that they wrote for the historic credits and have that be incorporated into the PR. But we didn't get anything official from their lawyer.
That's not the communications that I've had, which is basically with Don saying, whatever we have to do, as long, their concern is about the consistency. And I'm going to read an email that Don forwarded to me that is addressed to his attorney. And he's saying, we are willing to submit our rehabilitation plan approved by MHC tax credit staff to the city. I've asked our architect to work with MHA in resolving the pending amendment on the current plan, and we're working forward to a timely resolution. So, I mean, I think that's a little bit off topic right now, because I mean, I think that it is that there's the concerns about having a consistent preservation restriction between and the Mass Historic Commission and the City of Holyoke, and I think attaching the Mass Historic Commission's restriction to the city contract would resolve those potential conflicts. But more, this agenda item is deadlines and what are their deadlines, and whether it's the will of the committee to extend them or not, and that's up for the committee's consideration. I do have one question, and I don't have the contracts in front of me. I haven't looked at them in 2 months, but I do know that there was some debate about whether there was an error in the dates of the contract, and my recollection was that the contract might have said not 2020 but 2021.
No,
It
this
says
is
2020. I know this is. I'm just trying to.
It has 2 dates. Yeah.
No, it has 2 dates in it, and I can explain why I think comprehensively. When we did this originally, we had 2 sets of concerns. One was, were they really going to be able to start major construction and do the project when they thought they would be able to, starting this year? And that was the December originally 2019 in the contract 2020 date. Half money then or everything explodes. But we also had a 2021 date, which was originally, well, whether it was or not, but the later date was there to take care of the situation where, say, they had the money at the December date and they were ready to go and they had all the contracts signed and everything is looking great, and then the COVID crisis hits and they're delayed 6 months for reasons beyond their control. That later date was to give us the flexibility to extend if they had met the original funding contingency and begun major construction. Because they aren't going to, or at least I think it would take a miracle for them to, that later date is no longer relevant because we don't have the.
So there's 2 deadlines. One was to have funding, and 2 was to be either completed with construction or having. So the first deadline is that it would trigger a breach of the agreement is December of
this year.
this year. So
Yeah.
3 months from now, they either have the funding or they don't. And if they don't have the funding, then
Yeah.
they're in breach and the grant goes away. Unless we agree to some extension beyond that, whether.
Yeah, which I don't believe we can do without the city council reauthorizing it.
Well, we would have to, it would be whether or not it was our will to do first, whether or not we need to worry about whether we need the city council or not.
No, I think, and maybe I have been clear and I'm misunderstanding you, but the point I'm trying to make here is that as I understand the contract and the original conditions, we had no discretion to extend the December funding date. You know, if it was not met, the idea was that the grant would terminate automatically and those funds would return to us.
Okay.
And
so
it was only if they had the funding and then there was a delay that we had any discretion in the matter.
Okay. So let's but what do we, I mean,
I suppose we could
no disrespect, but maybe what we need is a city solicitor to weigh in on that. To say, okay, yes, as a committee, you do not have authority to extend any deadline on this, and then it's moot. We don't have authority. What can we vote on, right? So
I don't, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't think you need the solicitor. What was approved by the city council, if there's going to be a change to it, it seems to me would have to go back in front of the council if there's a change. They approved one plan, not a change plan or a modified plan.
Well, that's a good point. So, but again, we just did the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club. Why is that?
Because
why are we able to do that?
Our contract there gives us the discretion to extend for good cause shown.
It does.
Yes. That's why I intervened to ask Amy and double check it.
Okay. And the MIFA contract does not have similar language. Okay. Well, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, okay. So there's really not much to do there for us. I mean, I don't even know how, I guess if it was the committee's will, we could petition the city council to extend the dates, or maybe you can't even do that. I don't,
Yeah, well, no, I would think that we could, if the committee wanted to, go back to the city council and say, hey guys, this is the situation. You are the final authority about how we spend these funds.
Right.
Do you want to continue with our determination that if the funds aren't there, the grant terminates by operation of law? But, I think that probably the simplest thing is to just tell MIFA, look, this was the deal. And there isn't a lot of ambiguity in the presentations, but you are free to resubmit this application if you'd like to.
Okay.
Which would give the city council a chance to reapprove it if they would like to.
Right.
Good idea.
But, either way, the will of the committee is, what governs. And I won't object to anything that you all decide we should be doing.
Well, it's
but I think the easiest,
our authority is somewhat limited, right? I mean, in this case, it would probably require action of the city council. So, we would have to, take that step, and then it would go to the city council if it was the will of the committee to suggest or to punt to the city council and
yeah, and
I'm not getting a sense that that's really the will of the committee either. So,
well, it was a controversial application, and I think that this is a case where having the political authorities weigh in on it, if there is going to be any extension at all, is a good thing anyway.
Okay.
Even if they didn't absolutely have to, I would be relieved if they did.
Right. Okay. Well, let's communicate that to MIFA.
Sure.
So what exactly are we communicating to MIFA then, that if they can't get all the funding by December 2020.
Yeah, no, I think that the communication is, we have reviewed their request for an extension, and we believe that it is beyond the power of this committee to grant it. And therefore, if the conditions are not met by the December 2020 date, as has been previously discussed, it will terminate automatically. But if they would like to reapply, as certain other applicants are doing, if that is the eventuality, we will of course welcome their reapplication.
Okay, so if the funds are in place, I got what you said about how, we reviewed their request for the extension, and the committee believes it's beyond the power of the committee to grant that, given the conditions that were approved by city councils. But if the funds are in place by December 2020 through some miracle, they can go forward. If not, they can reapply right now.
Well, if not, they can reapply whenever they would like. And if they may already know that they aren't going to have those funds in the bank.
Right.
In which case they might want to just, reapply and basically start over.
Okay. Well, I hope that won't be a complication that they've already, signed the contract, with their attorney and all that.
Well, it doesn't matter. The contract's going to blow up in 3 months anyway.
Unless they try to dispute that extra date, the 2021 date, the end.
Well, I think if they dispute it, they're going to lose. I think it's very clear what happened.
Okay,
thank you. Only to listen to or watch the recording of that meeting.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised at how clear it was. I thought there was going to be a lot more ambiguity than there actually is.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's probably for a judge to decide, and we will never get to that point. No one's going to get in litigation over what this date is. It would be a fool's errand on their part to, chase that down. I do think that, the only thing I would add to, I think, what we're communicating to MIFA is that, is it true that the city council could modify that agreement, we're in effect punting to the city. We're saying the city council did not authorize us to modify that agreement. The contract doesn't, but does the city council have the authority to modify that agreement if it were?
I think that the committee itself has to present the recommendation, and then the city council approves it. They don't get to change the agreement. That's not their role.
Sounds like a legal question. I think
I absolutely know that to be true, that the city council cannot make the recommendation. They can only approve, reject, or they can reduce the amount, but they can't make the recommendation.
We're not asking them to recommend. What we're asking them to do is to modify an agreement that is signed by.
No. I'm sorry. I need to try to clarify this right here. The problem is that the agreement, our recommendation, which is what they voted on, controls, and our recommendation incorporated those drop dead dates. They are a material part of what we recommended. The city council does not have the power to change or exceed our recommendation under the law. So we would have to re-recommend with materially different terms.
Right, and so what we've said is, on the one part, we don't have the authority to modify the agreement. My question is, does the city council have the authority upon our recommendation? Could we, if the committee were to decide we want to extend this date by 90 days or 6 months, we don't have the authority to do that, but can we recommend it to the city council, at which point they could modify the agreement?
It is possible that we could submit them an amended recommendation.
Okay.
But I think that it would have to be an amended recommendation, and they would have to recommit to this. Yeah. And we would have to go through the whole process and agree that we were going to make a different recommendation.
Okay. Okay.
That's my sense that they
So
might as well just resubmit.
Right. So our communicate, it might be simpler to do that. I just want to make sure we're communicating accurately to MIFA that the first part I think we have under control. The second part I think isn't as much under control, and I want to just, you know, ask whether we should be also communicating to MIFA. We don't have the authority, however, if they were to submit a request for an extension, we do have the authority to make a modified recommendation for consideration to the city council. They might just say it's not worth it. We're not going to go down that path. But I just think if we're going to, I don't think we should just simply communicate. We don't have the authority to modify the agreement when we do have, but what we do have is the authority to make a recommendation for a modified agreement to the city council, which they would have to approve.
And I would not be comfortable doing that without consultation with both the city solicitor's office and the Community Preservation Act Coalition, because
taking the vote or communicating this to MIFA?
Communicating that to MIFA, because you know, we have the clear authority to have them reapply and to submit a recommendation based on renewed consideration if we choose to. That's easy. The fact that this contract will dissolve by operation of law in 3 months if they don't have that money is easy. Attempting to figure out a way to deal with this for them that doesn't involve any of our clear legal pathways is much more complicated and difficult, and I don't think it's any of our business to be doing it, frankly.
Okay. All right, so we have a pretty simple communication to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm sure they'll come back to
that. I think we explored all of the pathways in an effort to make sure that we're providing as accurate information as we can to an applicant. So I'm comfortable with that.
I appreciate having the discussion rather than just saying, let's do this.
Well, no, that's what look, it's a committee. Like I have one vote, you know.
But this is a really
you know, it's I understand. I think I know where we are. Okay, so Amy, what else do we have as we're working down through that?
Yeah, let's see. So VOC, you know, Valley Opportunity Council, 348 Chestnut Street, that historic project for $50,000, that has not even begun. That deadline is supposed to be December 31st, 21. And their lawyer is supposed to get back to, or actually I think the lawyer did get back to Jenna about the PR. They're still working on the PR. They actually had the similar questions that MIFA had, and I'm not sure what the latest is on that. But Jenna told them that they should submit their rehab plan, which can be incorporated into the PR in order to accommodate both the Mass Historic Credit requirements as well as the CPA, because they both require U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards requirements. Then the Valley Opportunity Council housing project, 337 Chestnut for $50,000, that has not begun either. And Jenna is going to be working on drafting the housing restriction, Jenna and the law department. So they're still in compliance. That's not, you know, that deadline is supposed to be December 31st, 21. Valley Opportunity Council 123 Pine Street Historic for $30,000 has also not begun. Their deadline is June 30th, 2022, even further. And again, I think that their lawyer is working with Jenna on the PR. Valley Opportunity Council 123 Pine Street Housing for $120,000 has also not begun. Jen is going to be drafting the housing restriction for that one. That one is due not till June 30th, 2022. So that's all of FY19.
Okay, can I just ask, well, and we probably don't know the answer to this now, but do we have do their contracts include language that allow us to provide extensions to them if they're needed? And that's,
I think that most of them do. I mean, I haven't looked at that part, but I think most of them do. I think that was a big issue with MIFA, was part of the idea to get that through was to say that it was contingent on the funding, all of the funding, you know, being available by a deadline. I think that the other ones may have more flex, that they could ask for extensions.
Will we check the contract language just to make, even we don't have to do it right now or this week or anything, just make a note to, so maybe at the next week in meeting, we can just have it's just good to know whether these contracts provide. And I would think that maybe going forward, it's something that we for the most part, we want to include in the agreements.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they are included in the others, but I'll double check.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, and then for FY20 projects, there's really not much to say, obviously, because this is all new, but I will just tell you a little bit about where we are with the contracts. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so the stained glass contract is finished, and actually Mike McManus has signed it. It's been sent to the mayor because, Bob Parent was on a deadline. So Kip, you should hear from Jenna soon about signing it once she gets it back to the law department. And their deadline is June 30th, 21. Wisteria, so let's see. I think I reviewed all of the applications, all of the contracts, and they're pretty close. I know with the Lady Liberty, they're close to the contract being done. The whole PR thing is a lot more complicated, as we know. But with the Lady Liberty study, Mike, we're waiting on the RFP language for the scope of work portion of the contract.
Yeah, that's gone out. We've had 3 people, per conversations with Bob Parent, 3 people have responded for requests for qualifications. And we did send out a number of invitations to bid on the project and for the study of the project. So that's where it stands as we speak.
Okay, so can you email me and Jenna the language of the RFP so that it can be incorporated into the contract? That's
I would go to Lori. I kind of step back because it's a city property, and Lori's the purchasing agent, and I didn't want to, her methodology and how she does her.
But we need that from you in order to complete the contract.
Well,
Who submitted that CPA?
Mike.
Project? So Mike, it's up to you to get the information to us.
Yeah, but I don't work for the city of Holyoke.
It doesn't matter. You submitted the CPA project.
I know, but I'll have to sit down with Lori.
Hello, you're in charge.
Mike, you're the co-applicant with the Holyoke soldiers.
Okay, wait a minute. Mike, you're suggesting that the purchasing department has the language for the RFP?
Yeah, I would have to. We sent I work with Bob Parent, and we proposed that I should say, he did all the work. He composed the request for qualifications, which included all the work that needed to be done for the study. Then for those, we had 3 companies that, and I don't know who they are, have already submitted returns and said that they would be interested in being considered to do the work. We're at that stage now. So we haven't approved anybody. We haven't met as a committee. We're not there yet. And I don't know what Lori Bergeron's timetable is, or I don't want to jump in and, I'm not an employee of the city of Holyoke. It's not really my project. It's the city's, it's my project. It's my idea, no question. But I'll call Lori and have her touch base with you, Amy, and see what she wants to do. I can't. Bob Parent's a city engineer, and Lori's the city's purchasing agent. How they go about their work is
well, this is just that we need a description for the scope of work to go in the contract, which was something we discussed with you at a prior meeting.
Oh yeah, that's in the request for qualifications. Yeah, that's there.
No, it's for the contract. It's for the contract language that Kip has to sign so that you can get the funding.
Yeah,
I know, but you can't get any funding. You can't get any funding unless the contract is signed. And the contract.
I understand that, but we're not there yet.
So,
yeah, but all we need is the description that was sent out in the RFP.
Yeah, all right. I can.
Right, that's what.
I'll get Bob Parent to forward it to you, Amy.
Okay.
And then
you can call him yourself and talk to him. Just ask him for it.
Mike,
well, I'm not the project manager. Amy, you're the project manager, so
Amy,
yeah.
Mike, if you could just grab that and send it to Amy, that would be very much appreciated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Um,
All right, so what other projects do we have for 2020 there? And just to be clear on that one, that's so that we're starting to draft an agreement for the consultant who's going to do the study.
Right.
Okay. So it's contract development. All right, what else? What's next?
yeah, the contract I'm talking about is separate from that, but okay. Okay, let's see, where are we up to? Holyoke merry-go-round, that contract looked good, so I think that Jenna will be able to share that soon with the Holyoke merry-go-round people, and same with Canal Row. Wisteria Hearst, I know she had a mistake in the award amount, so I corrected that, but that should go to the Wisteria Hearst soon. And same with Jackson Street. But all of those, many of these need the preservation restrictions drawn up, and the Jackson Street will need the housing. And that seems to be the thing that takes the longest, more than the contracts.
Okay, so that's the status of the 2020 contracts, making progress on all of them.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
Good.
So I think that probably satisfies agenda item number 3. I think we are, and agenda item number 4, which was a review of requests for project deadline extensions. I think we took care of that while we were in discussing agenda item number 3. I don't know, anybody disagree with that conclusion?
Nope, I think we
That
covered
agenda,
it.
and then the agenda item number 5, the MIFA preservation restriction update. I don't think we need to spend any time talking about that in light of a discussion of agenda item number 3. So, that brings us to other, and Mike Falsetti, you have something you want to add under other?
Well, 2 things, Mr. Chairman. Number 1, is there any update on the Scott Tower project or proposal, if there's been any movement or any updates? I wasn't at the last meeting, but I read it. I was wondering if anything had transpired, Kip, to you or to the city council. I'm not to the city council, city purchasing agent, or anything may have.
So I can help with that.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Rose.
So Kestrel Land Trust is actually pursuing this, and so we are in contact with the seller, and we have brought Kestrel Land Trust people out to the property. They're all in agreement that this is a good one. We have funded $7,500 to do an appraisal paid by Kestrel Land Trust to do it out of our pocket, and to just see what this property is worth, and then we'll make a proposal. We thought that it would be there's 3 grant projects that we can apply for, and Holyoke is it has this gateway city function, and so it gets us a good grant performance. So some of the grants are not until, well, they weren't till next year, but now because of COVID, it looks like maybe some of the funding might come a little earlier. So we're just waiting to hear back on that. So we're still negotiating, but there's 14.5 acres at the top of that ridge that is 10 feet away from the tower. And then I walked it with Rob Cabala the other day, and he showed us some really very cool things that are in the park. And so Kestrel's just trying to see if they can help Holyoke to protect the parks of Holyoke. So we're still moving forward in a very positive way at this point.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, they had come to us, Mike, I think, with potential of this being an emergency application, and
right.
They have kind of pulled back from the emergency status of it. So they may submit an application under our regular grant cycle application.
Yes, because the the seller has until December to, to do his, whatever he's gonna do. So he's moving on from that project to another project in Holyoke. And if we purchase, if we purchase this particular property, then it would give him the funds to do another project on Holyoke or Holy Family Road, which is another condominium project, which is much more sustainable for him. And so it would move his monies from this project to that project. So it still gives Holyoke some good income.
Okay.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Thank
Mike?
you. One other item, Mr. Chairman, if I may, with your permission, or if there's no disagreement with the fellow committee members, can we start the Zoom meeting, not the meeting, but the Zoom meeting at 5:55? So we'll have 5 minutes to see if we're connected in. If Amy could open up the doors, and so that we're all set. So when 6 o'clock comes around, we're looking at each other, we can hear each other, and we can go from there. Can we just move it 5 minutes, like 5:55, that Amy could open up the Zoom part of our show, and she could set it up, and then by 6 o'clock rolls around, we're all good. We can see one another, we can hear one another. If we got any problems, we can call or whatever, but just that 5 minutes, so we're not at 6 o'clock wondering where everybody is and so on and so forth.
And we didn't start till like 6:07 tonight while we
Right.
were spending 7 minutes doing what you're talking about. I mean, that works for me. I guess, Amy, does that fit your schedule?
That's fine. I think this time we were just waiting for people to join, but you're right. If we have 5 minutes more, there's more time to, and if everybody tries to arrive a little bit early, then we'll get all settled and be able to start the meeting on time.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to vote on that, right? Just
No vote there.
And I think really what you're asking, Mike, is that, Amy is at 5:55. When you click on this, you can join. You're not sitting there waiting for the host to start.
Right. In other words, at 5:55, the host has opened up the meeting. She's
Right.
plugging everything in.
Just want to keep in mind though, like this time I did have a little trouble because I've had a lot of trouble with the city laptop and had to have the first one replaced with this one. So sometimes there's a delay that is out of my control. But I'll do the best I can to do that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
if we can make it a point that all of us tune in at 5:55, it'll make it that much easier for everybody.
Right. Okay.
Good point.
Anybody else have any? I have one, but anybody else have anything else under other that they want to bring to the attention to the committee and discuss? No. No, we're all good.
We're all good.
So I want to talk about, and Amy and I have had a little bit of communication about this. It's trying to, Andrew McMahon has, continued to volunteer his time in helping us get a handle on some of the financial reporting and financial status or statements of financial condition of the CPA committee, and so we had Andrew was a treasurer, and then Elaine was the treasurer after, correct? So, and now Mike Falsetti is the treasurer. So I'm just bringing this to your attention. I don't know that we have a opportunity to solve this today, but it seems like we are a little bit what's the word? A little bit somewhat in the dark about some of the financial conditions of the CPA's funds, and so Andrew has been providing his assistance and working with Amy to get on top of this stuff, but, you know, he's busy and he's running out of time, and you know, he has suggested that he might be willing to, or maybe I'm soft selling, he is willing to continue to provide some of that, but is asking for some compensation for this work, which he's not on, you know, no longer a member of the committee. And it's, you know, it's financial services in some ways that he's providing. And, you know, I think my initial response to that is, you know, do we need that? And, or is this, you know, something that Mike, you want to try to tackle and get, you know, get up to speed on, your arms around what this workload is, and to see whether you think you working with Amy can get this done, or whether we want to, you know, and you know, or whether we want to pay, whether we want to, two, can we, you know, pay someone to provide that kind of services to us. And I mean, I don't even know what the procurement process, if anything, for something like that is. I don't know, you know, whether it's becomes a personnel issue. I don't know. It's very, I mean, I don't necessarily like going down this path, because
Can I just add, it would not be a procurement issue because it would be covered under admin, just like we have a website consultant.
Okay.
Who we pay.
Oh, okay. So what's everybody think about that? I mean, what are your initial thoughts, Mike? I mean, may not have understood what you agreed to. You agreed to be the treasurer, but you know, this is kind of in your domain. So I would ask, you know, what your thoughts are about it, and you know,
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly like to work with Amy, but we need the public domain and public money is, you have to be so scrupulous on how you record it and how you track it and how you report it and so on and so forth. I would not feel comfortable whatsoever in doing that myself. It's like asking you know, a local bartender what he thinks of the First Amendment. He gives you some good ideas, but he's not a lawyer. And it's a crude way of putting it, admittedly. I'm the bartender, and we'll let it go with that. But no, I think it's a necessity, Mr. Chairman, to have, if we're public money, it's a necessity to have. I was going to recommend an auditor to do this, because I'm just going back with the Housing Authority. We have so many auditors and financial folks that track, and the feds and the state are on us all the, I mean, with good reason. I mean, and we do our job very well. They tell us that we do very well. But I would rather we pay Mike for his efforts, because it's a necessity as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, can I ask a question? How much is the admin fund?
It's 5%, and actually we had projected 30,000. So there's a good amount of money in there. Plus, we're no longer paying Ryan very much. In fact, I'm learning how to I may be able to post the agendas there myself. So, you know, there's no longer like that first year when 5,000 was spent for him. He's no longer doing other stuff.
Okay, that's good to know.
Especially now, because we're doing these meetings by Zoom. I think it would be different if we were meeting in person.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say this, but you know, I have no idea as a member of this committee whether Ryan is getting paid, how much he's getting paid, and when he's getting paid, and you know, and frankly, the same thing is true for Amy. I have no idea what hours she's working. I'm not questioning anything. I'm just saying I have no idea. Right. And you know, and I don't know who does. I mean, who?
So I sign off on all Amy's hours. Okay. And I did question, why are we paying Ryan $5,000 to do things that we don't need him for? If he's only doing agenda, then if you're doing the agenda, Kip, then why are we paying Ryan to do an agenda? Why are we scheduling? The other thing he did was to set up our meeting places, but we don't have meeting places anymore. So why are we paying him for that?
Right.
So I think this is good money spent towards hiring Andrew McMahon, who I think is an exceptional person to help us out.
I agree.
I agree.
Yes.
You know, it
Yeah, I
sounds,
agree.
Mike Sullivan, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And just so everybody knows, Ryan's leaving as the council administrator also. He's taking a job, so he's given his notice.
So us moving on is a good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
sounds
it is.
like,
He
So-
definitely helped us out, boy, more than.
I mean,
He's been great.
I don't know, like, I don't know what we
So
would have
Andy's
done
gonna-
without him. So, and I don't know what, and so,
yeah, and you
well,
know,
I mean,
maybe-
go ahead.
or just maybe if we are officially hiring Andrew, one of the things that Amy and Rosemary and Mike can work with him on is just setting up systems that will let Amy or Mike or whoever the treasurer is in the future take care of most of this automatically. Because I think we don't have the structure in place to do it. And it's
Bingo.
not like what needs to be done is really that complicated.
It's
I
not.
think
Take
if
care of
Andrew
what
is-
automatically? Sorry, I didn't hear. To take care of.
Take care of all of the categories that funds
Yeah.
have to be spent in.
Mhm.
Set up the software so that
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking because he's very knowledgeable of Excel on Excel. So he thinks he can set up a whole framework, that could make all this more efficient.
Beautiful.
yeah, and that would be money well spent.
So,
He's well-rounded.
go ahead, Rick.
I think it's a great idea. I think Andy's well-rounded in that aspect. And I think it'll help the committee itself, just financially.
Yeah,
With his knowledge and
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to see, like, financial update become part of our monthly agenda,
I
where
think, great
how
point.
much has come in, how much has gone out, where is it going, what might
Yeah.
come back, what,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and I know that there's reporting requirements too. So, with the permission of the committee, I'm happy to reach out to Andrew and and ask him for something akin to a proposal with price included that the committee can authorize. I do want to make sure we're complying with whatever rules and regulations requiring. I know we have an admin budget that has money in it and we are allowed to use that money, but I think we're still required to comply with the city purchasing and procurement. And I know there's limits on things that are under a certain amount. We don't have to, get 3 proposals or I just want to make sure. So Amy, can you just do that? Can you just check with purchasing just to make sure? This is a very specific question. The committee's considering hiring a financial consultant to assist us putting together a framework for reporting and monitoring the financial condition of the CPA accounts. Do we have their, can we just go do that, or do we need to go through some kind of a process? Can you just
Okay.
please ask?
Sure,
purchasing?
I'm
I
really
think I can answer
sure
that.
that it'll be fine, but I can do it
Yeah,
if you
well,
want.
please I just wanted, we're spending, there's a lot, like I've got 35 years of public procurement experience. And what I know about it is there's a lot of surprises in there sometimes when you least
better
expect
believe
it. Let's just make sure we're complying with it.
No problem.
Okay.
Rose, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say that I know that we have that money as CPA has we can spend that 30,000 or whatever it comes in at the 5%. Anyway, CPA wants to spend it. It's not about city council. It's not about anything else.
Right.
It's how we choose to spend it. But I think it's a good idea, and I think your point is well taken.
Anybody else have any comments on this? Or I'll reach out to Andrew and just ask him to give us a very brief proposal about what the scope of work would be and how much he wants to get paid. And then we'll come back and we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Hopefully we can get that. I don't
Yeah,
think we need anything before that. Is there anything that's really pending?
Well, it would be great, yeah, to get that as soon as possible, because for example, there are some Department of Revenue forms that, you know, like one was due yesterday, and I've been, you know, constantly emailing the tax collector, tax collector and the assessor, and I still don't know if they put it in or not, you know, but it was due yesterday, as well as another form that I'm trying to work on. So, so yeah, it'd be great to have Andrew to help.
Yeah,
Figure this
I
stuff.
agree.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything on their, I'm sorry, Mimi?
Do you need a motion on that, or are we?
I don't think we do.
Okay, great.
I'm just going to reach out to him and get a proposal, and then we'll make a motion on the proposal.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything on any other things on your mind you want to?
Nope.
Rick, you got something?
No, nothing. No.
Okay, so things, all right. So I think we made a lot of progress tonight. I mean, and I think it'll be good to get some, you know, get the application process working for this next cycle. You know, I don't have any updates from Stephen Huntley on the rental assistance application.
Okay.
His pending emergency. One of the last communication we had from them was basically just hold and wait, right? He didn't need it, was kind of waiting to see what was going to happen, how great the needs were. So
Yeah, I think we're
that
still
it?
on standby. So, yeah,
Everything's
I
good.
think
all right,
all we need to do is pick a next meeting.
Okay.
good point. What have we been doing? We've been doing the first Tuesday. I know this is or Wednesday. This is the
Wednesday.
second one. Do we want to
This
jump?
is actually the third Wednesday, but I guess normally we were meeting the second Wednesday of each month.
Okay, so what does that look like
That's the 14th, October 14th.
Does that work for people generally?
It's good.
Looks okay for me.
All right, so let's just pencil that in. I'll get Amy an agenda and
Actually, can I just check one other calendar? I have to walk into another room to check it to
Go
make
ahead.
sure that date is okay. I'll be right back.
5:55.
Great.
Geez, Rick, that coffee must be getting cold by now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like iced
Yeah.
coffee though.
I think that date works.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so tentatively will be, what did we say, the 14th?
The
October
14th.
October 14th.
5:55. 6 o'clock meeting, but we'll try to.
I'll try to start if I can. I'll try to get it started at 5:50. So by the time you're here, you know, we'll be able to.
Anybody else have anything? No? Marco, you were incredibly quiet tonight.
Yeah,
He's always quiet.
well, I jump in if I need to.
That's right,
Just-
you do.
Oh, Marco, I just want to mention that I have had some meetings with Ben Murphy and Jenna about the preservation restrictions. I think you were invited to that.
You know,
So Ben is pretty apprised on it if you want to talk to him to get, you know, up to speed on all that.
I would have had an update to give to the commission this evening, but unfortunately I was not available for our meeting last Tuesday. So we're gonna have regular meetings, and I'll be able to give an update after the next meeting. I know a couple, the other meeting would have been like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'd have to go find my notes and, go look that up. But I'll hopefully, if we have our regular those meetings before this meeting, I'd be able to give updates. I'll try to do that for the next meeting.
Yeah, Ben is a really good resource too.
Yeah, no, I work with him quite closely on a number of items.
Okay.
Anybody got a motion they want to make?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Great.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.